everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Liza and I'm a holistic health coach, and today I want to talk about how faith and health can really go hand in hand. So let's get into it. First up, we got to talk about biblical medicine. The Bible is filled with references to medicinal properties of food and herbs. We see that things like meat is referenced over 290 times, fruit is mentioned 250 times, butter is mentioned 11 times, milk is mentioned roughly 40 times, honey is mentioned around 60 times, and then essential oils, aromatic herbs, and plants are mentioned over 1,000 times. So clearly there is some importance to what you eat, and the importance of diet is evident throughout scripture. We see in Proverbs 23 verse 20 through 21, "Don't keep company with those who drink too much wine or eat too much meat for pleasure, because a drunkard and a glutton will get poor, and drowsiness will dress a person in rags." Right there you can see the importance of eating in moderation and not becoming gluttonous or consuming too much of some type of drink or food. Also, if you can hear birds in the background, it's because I have the windows open, because this spring day is absolutely gorgeous and I'm so here for it. So don't mind any noises in the background like that. A cool note to see too is how often the Bible references different sanitation practices. This is especially evident in the Old Testament, where there are mentions of practices like washing your hands after touching someone who may have a disease, or even the clothes that the diseased person was wearing, and having areas outside of the camp for waste, and also how to handle dead bodies and just different things like that. So let's look at Leviticus 15:13 for an example. We see in verse 13 it says, "When the one with a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his body in fresh water, and shall be clean." There's a spiritual aspect to this as well, but I want to focus on just the physical aspect, because this is actually really groundbreaking for a lot of cultures back in the day. Germ theory wasn't discussed, and even not that far back in the 1800s and a little bit further back than that, waste and sewage products were just thrown out in the street, and you wonder why there were just these huge epidemics of sickness, because it's like you're walking in literal waste, human waste, and just the cleanliness was not a factor. So in biblical times, in the Old Testament times, for God to give these rules to his nation to be clean, thousands of years before the germ theory was even considered to be accepted, which that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we could go down, germ theory versus terrain theory, but still we can just grasp the importance of God showing his children the importance of cleanliness. So next I want to talk about how we can partner with God on our health journey. Knowing that God is the ultimate healer gives us so much peace and hope on our own health journey, regardless of if we get healed in this lifetime or not, because we have eternity to look forward to, where we know that we will be given redeemed bodies and there will be no more sickness. But even right now we can experience some of that. In Psalm 16:11 it says, "In your presence there is fullness of joy," which we can experience right now regardless of our circumstances or health conditions. What's also important to note is that God created us with a purpose. He crafted each one of us by hand, and we see that in Psalm 139, "For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." And so we can see that we are not just an accumulation of cells that was created randomly by the universe, or after thousands and thousands of years of evolution or something. It's very much intentional. God is a very intentional God, and he created us in his image. And so this should shift our thinking of having reverence for the creator who created our own body and treating our body well. And that means, eating well and moving to really just have respect for our bodies and ultimately for God. And I was taught this principle from a really young age, because my mom's chiropractic business was called Gift of Natural Health. So that was just always a reminder of, yes, health is a gift from God. And we're not always going to be perfectly healthy this side of heaven. We live in a sinful, broken world, and things like disease and uncurable conditions do sadly exist. And sometimes God does perform a miracle and can heal us from that, of course. Other times we have to live with the condition and really really, this helps us lean and depend on God 100% for everything in our life, because we realize that, we're not in control of our body, but still important to steward the gift that he has given us. Let's look in 1 Corinthians for an example of honoring our body and just that command as well. So this is Paul talking to the Corinthians. We see in verse 16 of chapter 3 in 1 Corinthians, "Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him, for God's temple is holy, and you are that temple." And so it's just really important to have, like I mentioned earlier, that respect, that reverence, and do your best to take care of your body. I'm not saying you have to go full out and have the best of the best all the time, but just understanding that your body is a gift from God and he dwells within you, and so you should have that level of care in what you feed it, what you do with it. We also see this in chapter 6 in verse 19. "Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body." And I just really like that part right there. You are not your own. I think so often as humans we can become really selfish, right? And just be like, well, this food tastes really, really good to me. I don't want to give that up. Or laziness can set in and be like, wow, that's just going to be really hard to implement that new habit. Or I don't want to go out for a walk today, or whatever it is. And I get everyone needs their time of rest, but this kind of mindset that you are God's and you are his holy temple should really just help instill not a prideful mindset about, eating healthy or anything like that, but just one of awe and fear of God and reverence of who he is, and that he even chose to dwell in sinners like us, and just the impact that can have. And I feel like that's a more healthy mindset to have to approach eating healthy or moving throughout your day, whatever it is in the realm of health that you want to focus on. Just having this as your foundation can be so crucial. And just seeing everything as a gift from him, and that he gives everything to us out of grace. It's nothing we deserve. We deserve the cross, but even there he gave up his son to die for us. And anything we get on this earth that's a blessing from him is just an abundance of his grace, and it is nothing that we deserve at all. And just going along with that reverence and understanding that everything we have is his should just lead us also to have an appreciation for things that he has created, specifically through nature, to help us heal. And up until 100 years ago, modern medicine was just not really a thing. They were doing things like bloodletting, all that crazy stuff. But even before that, like in biblical times, they were using essential oils and different herbs and things like traditional Chinese medicine, just using nature to help heal. And so you can see that in things like before red light devices, people were getting their red light from the sun, is very abundant in the first hour of the sun rising, and same with the sun setting as well. And just how important that can be for things like your circadian rhythm and just your digestion, how sleepy you get at night, all the things that I talked about in an earlier video. And just also appreciating the impact that hearing birds chirping can have on your nervous system, or the calming effects of ocean waves, or hearing the rain come down in a thunderstorm, seeing how green trees get in the summer and just the impact that can have on your mood, and looking at the blue sky and just getting to be outside in the nature that he has created for us to enjoy. Another thing that I want to kind of focus on that definitely was by design, and you can see that God would so lovingly have created this, is a concept known as like treats like. This is known as a base concept for homeopathy and how they treat different ailments. What I want to focus on in this video specifically is how this concept applies to food. You can kind of see this in nature. Maybe you thought of this, you see tree branches in the middle of winter with all their extending branches going this way and that, and you look at inside your lungs as well and all the different pathways, and they look so similar, and people are like, oh, that's evidence of a creator. It's so awesome and cool to see those similarities. And what's really awesome is to look at our food and find out the same things. So I'm just going to provide a few examples. You can look them up. There are tons and tons of them that just really, I feel like, emphasize from one perspective that there is a God, because it's like, how could this have just been created from randomness and nothing? There so clearly is intentionality from a creator. So first up is carrots. Carrots resemble eyes if you do a cross section of them. And what's funny is, or not so funny, because it's definitely created with the design, is that they are designed to improve your vision. These veggies are amazing sources of lutein and beta carotene, which are antioxidants that really support your eye health and protect against age-related eye diseases such as macular degeneration. Another example is walnuts. Walnuts look like tiny brains. You see all the little curves in the nut, and your brain has all these different curves as well. And they are the best nut for brain health. This is because they are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, choline, vitamin E, and other brain-supporting nutrients. Studies looking at aging people have shown that eating walnuts improves cognitive processing speed, memory, and mental flexibility. This one's kind of really funny, is ginseng roots, which look like mini humans, and they're important for overall health because they help with increasing energy, improving cognition, reducing blood sugar and stress levels, and promote relaxation and overall well-being in your body. And then lastly, this one's super important, is organs and glandulars support the specific organ. So if you're experiencing liver problems or just a sluggish liver, taking beef liver, for example, can be really beneficial to help bolster that organ, because liver specifically has a ton of vitamin B12 in it, and that's exactly what your liver needs. So eating an animal protein can really help improve the function of your liver. Now that we've covered some basics of how the Bible and health go hand in hand, I want to go over what it looks like to live these principles out. And a lot of these concepts that I'm getting are actually from this book right here, Life in the Presence of God by Kenneth Boa. This is such an amazing read, and I'm actually going through it again and really writing down different concepts, because he'll have at like the end of each chapter different things to focus on and actually implement during your week to really get these concepts down in your life. And so you're not just reading the book, you're actually going to retain it and practice it in your life. So it's like, oh, first thing in the morning, I'm going to read a psalm or sing a song. Last thing at night, this is what I'm going to do. And so it's just really helpful. He has a lot of good tips in here, so I would highly, highly recommend checking out this book. So one thing he talks about here is abiding in Jesus. This is one way that you can live in the presence of God. And he's pulling from John, where Jesus talks about him being the true vine and we are the branches. So let me just read a portion of that because I think it's really important. Okay, so I'm in John chapter 15, verse 4. This section is called I am the true vine. Verse 4, abide in me and I in you. This is Jesus talking, by the way. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. So this really means that we are to stay close to him, and we get our nourishment and life sustained through him, just like how branches get their life and nourishment from the vine. As the branches, we are constantly drawing health and energy from the vine. This also means that we are depending on Jesus 100%, or should be, and trying our best to be, right? We're not going to be perfect at it, but that is the goal. And with this dependence, joy comes as a byproduct, because we're not trying to, frantically control everything around us and do life by ourselves. And when we try to do that, it's really, really exhausting, and a lot of things can tank because of that. But when we find our true fulfillment in Christ and we're drawing from him and his nourishing word and studying his life, we receive so much joy and just contentment and energy too. Another way that we can abide in him is by taking our emotions and our feelings to him. No emotion is too big for God, and he knows it already, but it's still important that we, talk it out and express it, just like David did in so many of the Psalms. No matter what emotion or how messy they are, we know that God cares for us as a loving father, and that's part of the freedom in our relationship with him, of expressing ourselves fully, knowing that he cares for us and wants what's best for us. And it just really allows for a growing intimacy with God. That's how you deepen a relationship, and it can start to really energize our activities, and we can emanate his love to others around us. This is a concept that I actually learned about in my health coaching course, but it's called a spiritual triathlon. I think it can be really beneficial to incorporate in our lives. So the first leg of the triathlon is you start with 10 minutes of gratitude. So preferably writing this down, but even just thinking about it, things throughout your day or your life that you're grateful for, and just spending time remembering how God has carried you through and things that you're thankful for, the blessings in your life that he's given you. Spending time in gratitude really helps us savor the good things in life, and it helps us to focus less on the negative things or things that are dragging us down. What's more, studies show that it can enhance your physical and psychological health, boost your happiness and life satisfaction, and protect you from materialism and burnout. Next up on the spiritual triathlon is doing 10 minutes of Bible reading. Reading God's word is so important to understanding God and growing closer to him. We hear in Hebrews 4:12 that his word is living and powerful. There is so much wisdom to be gained from it and purpose to be found just from diving into God's word. And there's a really cool study that was done that showed if people read their Bible 4 days a week, so not even, perfectly every single day, but they were just consistent with it 4 days a week, they found that that doing this practice decreased a person's odds of struggling with things like feeling bitter, which went down 40%. This decreased loneliness down 30%. Overeating or mishandling food decreased by 20%, and feeling fear or anxiety also decreased 14% for these participants. There's a recent study too that was done looking at a sense of purpose in your life and the health effects it can have on people. So this was done in people over 50 years old, and they followed them for 4 years and found that those with the greatest sense of purpose in life were less likely to develop heart, circulatory, and blood conditions, and were significantly less likely to die of any cause. So it's so important that you have a sense of purpose, and specifically rooted in God and His truths, because not only is it so important for your spiritual health, but also it has effects on your physical health as well. The final leg of the spiritual triathlon is spending 10 minutes in prayer or meditation. Research shows that this can decrease stress, and people who pray are less likely to experience worry, fear, self-consciousness, and social anxiety. We see the importance of meditating on God and His Word in Psalm 1, which I'm going to turn there and read this for you guys. The first psalm, right out of the gate, it says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on His law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers." And so this is just really highlighting the importance of spending time with God and meditating on His truths and reminding yourself of His truths when maybe you are starting to slip into believing some lies and just succumbing to our sinful desires in our flesh. And so meditating on His Word is going to be so important for that as well. Prayer and meditation are great, and so is going for a walk in the woods. And honestly, bonus points if you pray while you or meditate while you're walking as well. I like to do this a lot instead of listening to a podcast or music, just really surrounding myself in nature and thanking God for the beautiful creation that surrounds me, or talking about what's stressing me out during the day and just trying to give it to Him, or thanking Him for His character, who He is. And I feel so much better every time. It really forces me to slow down, not just my pace, but also my mind and my thoughts, versus the times where I am listening to a podcast. I'm walking a lot faster. I'm obviously not focusing my brain on God. I'm focusing on something else, which I'm not saying that's necessarily terrible, but I just feel a lot more rushed and stressed out afterwards versus, more in a calm state. So that's just something that you can do in your own life anecdotally and see, like, okay, the times when I do actually spend my walks praying or just talking to God versus times when I'm not, like, how do I feel? Another great option is to incorporate breath prayers in your life when you're feeling especially stressed out or anxious about something. So this would be just breathing in something like God and breathing out, I belong to you. Or breathing in, Lord, breathing out, you are my shepherd. Breathing in, be anxious, breathing out, for nothing. Breathing in, taste and see, and breathing out that the Lord is good. This is just a really simple practice that can help calm your brain down from just overreacting or racing and spiraling into, further anxiety and stress, and just really honing in on specific biblical truths that are going to help reduce your stress response in your body, calm down your nervous system, because you're focusing on breathing in and out slowly instead of hyperventilating. And then you're also just turning your mindset back to God instead of focusing on things that maybe we can't control, or even things that we can, but we're getting frazzled by. Another thing to incorporate too is treating each day like it's a mini life. This is just a really good perspective shift to remind us that we don't know how long we have on this earth. God could call us home at any moment, and sometimes we can get caught up and just be like, oh, well, I'll just put that off till tomorrow, or I'm not gonna have to worry about that for a while, so I'm just gonna kick the can further down the road. But really just stepping back and being like, all I'm gifted right now is today, and it's a gift from God. And so, waking up in the morning, trying to direct your first thought to God, whether it's through a prayer. For example, we could look at Psalm 3 and 4. So Psalm 3 is something that you could read in the morning, just this one verse. You could say to yourself, Psalm 3 verse 5, I lay down and slept. I woke up again, for the Lord sustained me. That's just such a simple sentence, but it's so powerful. I laid down to go to sleep, I slept, and I woke up, and God is the one who sustained me. He is the one who breathes life into our lungs. We can do nothing about it. And so if He blesses us with another day, that is all because of Him. Just saying that to yourself and directing that thought to, like, okay, God, like, today is yours. I want to follow you during it. And just what you do in the first even hour of your day is just so vital for how the rest of your day goes, right? Instead of when you reach for your phone, you're probably gonna be stressed the whole rest of the day because you're just bombarded by text messages and social media posts, and you're just frazzled the rest of the day on. But if you spend time even just praying this simple prayer and just like admitting this truth to yourself and to God, and maybe spending some time in the Word before you go off to work or whatever it is you have to do, so important for your mindset. So looking at your day as a mini life, right? You have birth, so that'd be waking up in the morning, praying something like this. You have growth, you're going throughout your day, you're getting stuff done, and then, as the day wanes on, you have a decline, just like how in life we get older, we decline, and health, all the different things, and then death would be equated to going to sleep, right? So at nighttime, you can also kind of bookend your day and pray Psalm 4, verse 8. In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. This is super beneficial too, because this is something that I specifically struggle with at night. I feel like a lot of the day catches up with me and things that maybe I was pushing off that I didn't want to think about, and now my brain is like, all right, now we got time to think about it. Like, it's silent, it's dark, let's bring up all the nasty things, all the horrible things you didn't want to think about, which should definitely be, journaled about or talked about, whatever, but just praying something like this verse is like, okay, in peace, I'm going to lay down and sleep. Because only God can make us dwell in safety, and just giving him everything that you're anxious about or worried about, whatever it is, giving all of that to God and being like, okay, like, you're going to sustain me and keep me safe while I sleep, and I'm going to sleep in peace, is just so beneficial. And then also something important to do is incorporate times of solitude. This is something I'm working on. So again, like I mentioned earlier, going on walks where you're just praying to God and just being silent and just alone with your thoughts instead of constantly distracting yourself with your phone or talking or work, whatever it is. Obviously, you have to do work during the day, but you know what I mean. These times of solitude just really help bring us into the presence of God, where our souls are nurtured and we can more deeply root ourselves in God's love for us. Let's go to Psalm 139 here, verses 23 to 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. This is a really simple prayer you can pray to God too when you're in those times of solitude and you're doing a lot of deep reflection, and remembering to have God search your heart and find maybe some idols or things that you need to give to God, and things that you can work through, or times in your life where you're like, oh yeah, I remember when God provided for me this, or whatever else, and you can spend some time in Thanksgiving too. But that's just a really another important practice you can incorporate in your life. And what better role model to look at than Jesus? We see him go off to be by himself a lot in prayer, and specifically we can turn to Matthew chapter 14, where he just got the news that his beloved cousin John the Baptist was beheaded. We read here in verse 13, this is right before he feeds the 5,000. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. And immediately after, he gets followed by the crowds, and he has compassion on them and heals their sick. And we just see him be this great physician, not only for our souls, most importantly, but also for our physical bodies too. He has so much compassion and loving kindness on his creation that he was willing to heal them even when he needed time alone. We do see after this miracle of him feeding the 5,000 that after he had dismissed the crowdsmen, verse 23 here, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. So again, you just see Jesus here highlighting the importance of prayer and spending time alone in solitude. He does this too right in the Garden of Gethsemane before he is to be crucified, and just crying out to God. And so that is just something that we should really model in our lives as well. If Jesus did it, like, we should be doing that too. And really quickly, I just want to make a special note on suffering, because as I mentioned earlier, having faith in God does not mean that he is going to heal us completely this side of heaven. Of course, he definitely could, and he's still a God of miracles. He doesn't change, but it's just, you can go down such a slippery slope of like, well, I must just not have enough faith, that's why I'm not getting healed, or, I just need this one protocol and then I'm going to be healed. And there's nothing wrong with pursuing health, but just understanding that there's also purpose in suffering. We may not fully understand why God can allow certain people to go through certain health struggles, but we do know that suffering is a tool that God uses to shape us. And it is also a connection to Jesus, who suffered to save us. God uses pain, struggles, and suffering to give us a better vision of our desperate condition and to set our sights beyond this world, because this earth is not our home, and we're going to spend eternity in a perfect world with God. Our perspective can also deepen being in the valley, because it allows for our longing for heaven to grow, because the things of this earth and the hopes of this life have let us down. Our suffering can be a mirror to get to the core of what we really believe, and to sharpen our faith, build our trust, and release any idols that we might have, and realize that only God satisfies, and in his presence there is fullness of joy. Lastly, I think it's important to note that our suffering is never in vain. Whether it's a terrible diagnosis or or lingering health condition, God can always redeem our troubles for our good in His glory. Suffering may be inevitable in this world, but it is only temporary. We have eternity to look forward to where there is no pain. Let's just lastly look at Revelation 21. In verse 4, he says, "He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away." This is such a comfort to know that pain will not always be here, mourning and death will not always be part of our story, but that God will redeem it and we will get to spend eternity with Him in a new world where there is no more pain or any. And it's just really important to accept that our human understanding of suffering is so limited to God, who sees the big picture, and so we can come to peace resting in Him and trusting Him that He knows what's best for us and He can sustain us, and that all things are filtered through His grace and He can use anything for a redemptive purpose. So that's all I have for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear them below. Join me next time as I talk about the energy pillar. Bye!